So not only was this the most visually polished and intriguing episode of the Misfit of Demon King Academy, I'd go as far to say it was clearly the most brutal and graphic, but it was the most engaging for sure, and we got to see ANOS at his most pissed off we have ever seen. And when you have someone who is the Demon King of Tyranny, generally you kind of associate pissed off, angry as their main characteristic. But at the end of the day, ANOS is a pretty good guy. He honestly invokes confidence, and you don't really see him mad all that often. And when he does get mad, it's very far and in between the last moment. But when you go as far to almost kill one of his loyal friends and minions and servants, whatever you may want to call it, and different people may look at the whole situation in a different field, but for him, it's a very valuable friend. And even if the heroes of this world would say it's just a servant and a minion, for him, it's someone he deeply cares for. And when you go to the extreme of wanting to destroy her source so she won't be able to reincarnate, and you brutally stab her over and over and over and over again, you do not get the ANOS we typically see. You get the Demon King of Tyranny, who makes you feel every wound as he revives you and gets answers out of you, as he tortures you and then he destroys you so you can't reincarnate. This was intense beyond words, and I thought, this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to smack some hero sense into these people and what a true hero would be, and we definitely got that. But quickly I noticed that this episode was very different than the others. The polish and the just visual flair was much more than we're typically used to, and this is a show that honestly screams creative in its visual department. It's always spicing up magical flair, it's always doing something interesting with its production and really taking the anime medium to its full potential for a Magic Academy anime. This isn't a show that you look at and say, oh, they're reusing and recopying the same animation spell we've seen before. It almost always feels like there's something different happening. But when you really started seeing the gore here, and there was arms flying, and I was like, okay, yeah, they can heal themselves, so it's not that bad, but there was just something haunting about this episode, and I didn't think anything too bad was going to happen in the main cast, but I thought they kind of building up to a death. Were they doing something interesting here? I was like, I don't know what they're doing. And it had me a little unnerved, but more hyped than anything. But almost immediately as this episode started, I felt as if we were watching the Misfit of Demon King Academy movie. Like a lot of those times where you get a show, it gets a movie as like a sequel to adapt like the next couple of novels or whatever. It felt like the production just screamed movie quality, as they didn't really have to spice it up to keep us interested because the show looks good. It very rarely dips, and when it gets into action, it almost always looks spectacular, and at the very worst, it looks damn good. As they started building up the things, and we're seeing actually ANOS not be able to deflect every single attack, I was thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting. You got one of the other supposedly sources of Hero Kanin, and she's kind of emotional. She has no soul, it feels like, but she was actually able to break a shield that he was using. I was like, are we actually going to see him like lose an arm? Are we going to see something like interesting? Obviously, he wasn't going to lose, but I thought maybe this was going to put up a fight. And then you see Misha go to basically where she was being summoned to. Well, originally it was ANOS being summoned, but he sent her because he had to deal with this, because if he stopped, basically he would have to start from square one, which even then wouldn't be too much of a challenge. And when you started seeing it get a little more serious, I was like, okay, she's going to be in danger, her life's going to be on the line, maybe she will get stabbed, but they went pure on horror. They went slasher film level of over and over abusing our girl, and I was like, no. And this is where it got interesting for me, because we're watching a show where we assume ANOS will always win. It's not a matter of if he will, it's how he's going to win. So I was thinking to myself, she's going to be alright. But with every stab, with every slash, it felt like I was getting progressively more worried about her life, especially when he said that he was going to destroy her source so she couldn't reincarnate. And there's about 10% of me by the end of this scene where I thought she could actually legitimately die. And I know there's going to be those people who say, oh, that's ridiculous, ANOS would always come and save the day, he's the most powerful character in the show. But the thing with it is there was nothing indicating to me that there was a guarantee that ANOS knew something was wrong, that he would be there in time, because if he was able to destroy her source before he got there, no amount of magic would be able to bring her back in terms of what the anime has told us. And even though, 9 out of 10 times when I ran this scenario through my head, I was like, she's going to be okay, it still was disturbing and graphic to look at, and there wasn't a guaranteed certainty that she would come out of this alive. And that's why I really commend this episode, because even though this is a show with the most overpowered character you could think of, he's basically the One Punch Man of this show, it still lends itself to say that bad things can happen to other characters that he cares for, and because you made the Demon King of Tyranny care about his parents, care about his friends, care about the well-being of those who are genuine towards him. It actually gives you a threat that if he's not around every single time, there's no guaranteed. And some people may want to say, like, how did he even know something was wrong? Well, most likely because it took longer than he assumed. He might even have like a spell on her to monitor her, and just because he is, this is a loyal servant to him, there's plenty of ways that he can know something went awry. And I really like that he was able to come in there and basically see him at his most pissed off and probably the most Demon King of Tyranny appeal that we've ever seen of him. And just the overall stakes and the escalation and how it started off so one-sided and then quickly became just so disgusting, and the voices and the overall idea that they're basically all trying to kill the demons because of this horrible scumbag of a teacher who turned into a chimera-looking beast. And then you have the whole chanting kind of like fangirl club, which I thought was really cute. I was like, oh, they're having a little cheerleading party, and they actually turned a cheerleader group of tropes into something that actually felt meaningful in this episode. And it's just a constant array of like, it felt like we watched a movie. It honestly did. It felt like we watched something that was like an hour and a half. It was packed full of action and adrenaline, but every step of the way it felt like we were progressing towards characterization for these characters. And that's an amazing feeling to me. It just felt like this episode had everything that we loved about this, and without very much struggle, it became the best episode of this series for me. And I don't know where the final 2 episodes are going to go, because it feels like after meeting apparently the source of magic, or apparently just the epitome of magic, where do you go from here? What do you do with that plot line, and where can you go to wrap up the first season, as pretty much everyone watching is probably dying for a season 2. This is just an incredible episode full of adrenaline and just excitement at every which angle that actually had me upset. It turned my stomach, and that's an amazing feeling for a show where typically people would say it's just an overpowered mess of a character, but they're still able to keep it full of stakes, and just, you never know where it could go with some of the other characters, especially when it's laid out that if you destroy a source, there's no coming back. With the amount of gore that was in this episode, I actually have to commend this series for not making it feel edgy or just for shock factor. Like some of the more simple gore, like when arms were being cut off and severed and just things like that, or characters being stabbed or even stabbing themselves, it went the normal amount that I think we probably assumed the series would go for gore, but they were able to direct it in such a way that it was shocking and actually caught us off guard. But when they went for Misha and just the overall stabbing, it looked like a lunatic scene, and they highlighted it enough to make it disturbing, but I like the shots where they're at the shadows and you just see the silhouettes on the wall. There was enough to really make it feel like you didn't want to see everything, and when they did show us, you wish they wouldn't show us like they were before. They kind of bounced around in a way that it never made it feel graphic in the way that it was just like, oh, an author or a studio just trying to be overly edgy to get the shocks out of you. But rather, the gore that you saw actually aided in terms of the writing and the dialogue, and it made it look like a psychopath scene, so when ANOS did come, you were so relieved to see him just revive him and destroy him over and over, and when he finally was gone, you would just let out this giant sigh of relief. The show knows how to do excitement in all the ways of good excitement, bad excitement. It's just a mixture of emotions, and this is one of the biggest shocks of 2020 for me for anime. It's just so different than what you think you were walking into, and every step of the way they find new ways to continue to make it exciting, and I just don't know where they could go with the finale, and that's an amazing feeling. Of course, as always, let me know your thoughts and feelings on this very brutal but exciting episode down below. If you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like to show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.